Welcome to where the screen door slams and the coffee mug hits the table. You're listening to The Family Balancing Act with me, Maureen Huntley, mom, grandmother, and board-certified holistic and functional medicine health coach. Each episode will explore the realities of your day-to-day family life in this modern era of nonstop texts, memes, and technology. After all, how do we keep ourselves sane and our family healthy? I'll have amazing guests and thought-provoking discussions, and we'll take a holistic look at family health, emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual. Whether it's a micro perspective of family involving healthy snacks, teenagers with an attitude, stressed out husbands, partners, adult children, potty training, elder care, grandchildren, college prep, or a macro perspective of world events, including flu, earthquakes, the brainwashing media, finances, and oh, so much more. We'll find a way together. So take a deep breath, exhale, and know that you're not alone. Bring on the Family Balancing Act. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Family Balancing Act, where we are restoring the heart of motherhood, one conversation at a time. If you've been here with me before, well, welcome back. And if this is your first time visiting, welcome. It's an honor to have you here. So come right in, pull up a chair, grab a tea, a coffee, or green juice, because we have a lot to talk about today with my guest, Danny Cohen, an epilepsy thriver, traumatic brain injury survivor, positive thinker, oh boy, is he ever, gratitude warrior, and author. I'm Maureen Huntley, your host, board-certified integrative, holistic, and functional medicine health coach. I'm a mom, grandmother, wife, and CEO of my family's home operations. If you miss any of our episodes, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google, Podbean, Pandora, iHeartRadio Podcast, CTR Radio Network, and even more podcasts, believe it or not. So sign up for my monthly newsletter, and there on my site, you'll also see all of the podcasts you can find me on. And grab my free year-round holiday Stressless tips at maureenhuntley.com, where you can also find out how to work with me as a health coach. I love what I do. I love holistic solutions for health and well-being for women, for moms, for families. We all need to be supported. So deep breath, exhale. It starts with you here on the Family Balancing Act. So my inner ramblings in this episode are around my getting into a place of gratitude, and the guest I have is perfect for this, and staying there. But I've had things show up lately that have me looking at doing some major cleanup work on forgiveness and other stuff. It can be a challenge when my old stories rise up and want attention, but I'm so tired of talking about that old stuff, and it can get to be so heavy, that old stuff. I mean, for goodness sakes, it's like an old burlap bag I keep dragging around that's got holes in it. It's dripping out all over the place, as I'm sure my stories are old and dragged out from long ago. So I try to keep perspective. So I looked into what my emotions, feelings, and moods are and what that actually means. And sometimes it takes over my thoughts and I get stuck on the dot of trying to work it out. I don't know if you ever do, but I do. And I just forget that taking a deep breath and exhaling changes my energy, my chemistry, and my mindset. Okay, sometimes it's like multiple breaths where I'm hyperventilating. When an emotion shows up that's big and needs to be felt and acknowledged, it takes energy. Be it happy or sad, it takes energy. No judgment, just watch it, acknowledge it, feel it, and try not to wallow in it. I say to myself. Again, I say no judgment. But time makes it different. That old burlap bag becomes different. It's true that time indeed changes everything, sometimes in seconds, minutes, hours, or years.
But time does indeed move on, and then there's the next thing, balancing. Isn't actually where the work gets done anyway. It might be a comfortable place for a moment, but we never stay there, do we? I just wish I could or would, but instead I wobble. My family wobbles, and we wobble, and it feels crazy. I guess it's when I'm back in the balance for that moment, I look back on my own wobbling, that I know that I've grown in some way. I've seen this effect in my children, my husband, and friends. I've seen it when they've done the work, and hopefully they see it when I do the work. To quote a post by Dr. Joe Dispenza, as human beings, emotions are one of the most powerful tools and resources of creation that we possess. This means that as the creator of our own emotions, because we are endowed with free will, at every moment we have the opportunity to choose how we think, feel, act, and react to the people, circumstances, and situations in our lives. Emotions come first, which is our interpretation of a trigger that takes place. And then our brain recognizes it. And then our brain produces chemicals that are released throughout our body, creating this feedback loop from our brain to our body and our body to our brain. And this feedback loop takes about 6 seconds, which is the name of a great website I found that focuses on the subject of emotions, called 6seconds.com, the Emotional Wellness Group. So after emotions, feelings come in at the 6-second mark. As the emotional chemicals are working through our bodies, this feeling, the emotion is physical and emotional as we fully integrate it. And according to 6 seconds, feelings happen as we begin to integrate the emotion, to think about it, as it soaks in. And then moods. Moods develop from a combination of emotions and feelings. A mood as an old emotion and feelings that we play out over and over again. A false story of the actual incident, or an original emotion and feeling. And these moods can go on and can become embellished in a story that lasts decades. Well, per Dr. Joe Dispenza, old emotions become personality traits. Just do it over and over and over. So in episode 117 of the Family Balancing Act, my wonderful guest, Rochelle Henry, and I discussed her somatic work, the storage of emotions in our bodies, thus creating illness, pain, both physical and emotional, and the work it takes to release it. And that's what her work does. And our conversation got me thinking more about how I talk to my body, and actually how my body talks to me. And what I have to say about it, my thoughts and how they might influence the outcome of my health, and where in my body this stuff is showing up and why. So what are we doing to ourselves with all these thoughts and these things that are feelings and emotions? And what is it happening with our children? What are they thinking about and saying about themselves, to themselves? This ongoing conversation inside all of our collective heads. So changing our energy, how might we do that? Well, we change our energy possibly through meditation, getting into a place of breath again. As in episode 115 with my guest, Glennis Eldred, I learned so much from my guests and from my listeners. I've done the research and the studying, but I'm not always doing the work. And here on the Family Balancing Act, I'm being held accountable to do my work. So I'm so very grateful for them. Change our story, be the example for others, our family, the world family, by being the pebble in the water and letting it ripple forth. So today, I am so very blessed and grateful to have Danny Cohen here as my guest. He is an epilepsy thriver, a traumatic brain injury survivor, positive thinker, gratitude warrior, and published author whose mission it is to inspire people, whether they've had traumatic brain injuries or not, and help them live a life full of love, hope, strength, and gratitude amidst their mess. He's a great website, a great book, and this man is just so full of love and light. And I am beyond honored to have you here today, Danny. It is just so great to have you here with me. And boy, do I need some gratitude help here.
Thank you very much, Maureen.
It's great. I just can't wait to get digging in here with your story and with your work. And I know I follow you on Facebook, and I'm telling everybody out there, follow you, because you daily, you're pushing us all to do our work, to do our gratitude work.
Absolutely. And gratitude is something that allows us to wake up every morning with an open heart and open mind. It's allowed me to do many things that I once thought that I couldn't. It's allowed me to wake up in moments that I thought that I couldn't wake up and feel energized and feel in less pain than I thought, on days where I was in excruciating pain, and on days where I've had seizures and other things going on. So gratitude is one of those things that has allowed me to do many things that I thought were impossible.
I know, I watch it, and I find that your story is absolutely mind-blowing. So do you mind starting by telling us from the very beginning?
Sure. My story begins back in 2012. I grew up with three chronic illnesses. I have hydrocephalus, cerebral palsy, and epilepsy. I had developed epilepsy at the age of 10, but I have congenital hydrocephalus and cerebral palsy. So that means at birth. But now, growing up with these three disorders, I never really loved myself. I always felt inadequate, and I never really felt in a place that I could fit in. I have an older brother, and I have a twin brother rather. And so growing up in a family of two siblings that were completely quote unquote normal, it made it very difficult for me to, feel at peace and feel at ease with the person who I was, living with these three chronic illnesses. So I was bullied and teased throughout my school, and I, once again, didn't really have the relationships that I had that my brothers had. I found that it was very hard for me to develop the relationships with other people. And once again, it came down to a lot about my own self-talk at the time. But throughout my school age and even into my adulthood, I started to feel very isolated, and to the point where there were multiple times where I tried to commit suicide. And so 2012, I was 32, and I still felt very isolated and very alone, where I had attempted my final suicide. And I live here in Manhattan. So I had gone down to a subway station, and I was going to put myself in front of a subway train. But as I was going to do that, there were a lot of things going through my mind. There were all these things in reference to not having the right relationships with the people that I wanted to have, not having friends, not having a girlfriend, not having, the ideal life that my brothers had, not having the ideal life that everyone else should have. And when the train had pulled into the station and I had just about went to push myself in front of the train horn blew. And I remember seeing the conductor's face. And I pulled myself back. And so as the train stopped and I pulled myself back, I'd gotten on the train. And then as I'd gotten home, I have focal epilepsy. So my seizures are generally not grand mal, the ones that you generally see, whether they're on television or those are the general seizures that you would see where you convulse and you drop. My focal seizures are basically all on the left side, so on the focal side of the brain, and they cause sensations such as I have sensational differences on the left side, left arm, left leg. So those are the types of episodes that I would generally have. But when I had gotten home that day, I had a series of 7 grand mal seizures, and that's called status epilepticus. So it was one after the next. And all I can remember from that day was waking up on my floor and not knowing where I was at the time, just the excruciating pain. I remember the next morning getting a knock at the door from my father. And at that point, throughout the year of 2012, I knew I needed to make a change. I knew I really needed to finally figure out where I needed to be and where I needed to go in order to finally love Danny for who he was, and to not be where I was prior to that, because I didn't want to go back to the life that I was living. I didn't want to be in the position that I was that day and prior to all those moments where I hated myself for living with all these conditions that I have. So throughout 2012, I started my healing journey, and I found gratitude. And gratitude is such a beautiful emotion. And I started to really research the effects of gratitude, how it has the healing effects on the body and how it has the healing effects on the brain. And so throughout the year of 2012, I started to really notice what a difference it made on me and what a difference it started to focus on my relationships with my family. So it changed not just me, but the relationships that I had with my family and with other relationships that I was having with other people. So it really started to make me feel good about a lot of different aspects of myself. I mean, it was such an amazing feeling. So throughout this year, I just moved forward in the light of gratitude, and I embraced what I say all the time now, is that I embraced my beautiful mess, and I encourage everybody to embrace their beautiful mess. You know, I wrote a blog post today about embracing your beautiful mess. And, you know, a lot of people who are living with a chronic illness generally struggle with embracing their beautiful mess, but then there are a lot of those people who aren't going through an illness that also struggle with the daily chaos of life. You know, whether it's internal or external, we all struggle with the news and what's going on outside, and, you know, all the things that we cannot control, whether it's the news or family relationships, or whether it's the things at work. And then, of course, just how we internalize that, what we're thinking about, all the different things that make our life miserable. But that's generally what life is. It's a beautiful mess. It's not just a mess. It's a beautiful mess, and you have to allow yourself to see that.
Thank you so much for saying that. That is beautiful.
Thank you.
To actually address it that way. It feels so good when you say it. I can feel the resonance in my heart. Thank you.
You're welcome. So as I started to really embrace my beautiful mess, I found out that I was a candidate for the seizure surgery during the year of 2012. And so, just a matter of fact, February 5th, So yesterday was my 10-year anniversary of my seizure surgeries. And so February 5th, 2013, I had 3 brain surgeries for my seizures. And unfortunately, they were unsuccessful. But I always say that they were a successful, unsuccessful surgery, because when I was lying in the hospital bed and the doctors came in and they told me that the brain surgery didn't work, because during that week, I had actually had another 2 or 3 seizures after the brain surgery. And they'd said the reason why the surgery was unsuccessful is because the activity had gone from one area to the next. And, there are individuals that happens, but unfortunately in my case, because of the complexity of my brain with all the other issues that I have, that's just the way that it happened. So it now had gone to other areas of the brain, and that's now the way it is. So of course, I looked at my life and I said, well, shit, this is now life. And it sucks that now I'm going to have to live this way for the rest of my life. I thought I was going to be seizure free. But at the same time, I look back at 2012, and I believe I had mentioned to you the other day, I read a book called The Last Lecture by Randy Pausch while I was in the hospital. And Randy Pausch died of cancer. He had about 10 tumors in his belly, and gave a last lecture on gratitude and how living with his tumors, he didn't look at his tumors in a morose way and about how he wanted to live the last weeks of his life. He wanted to live the last weeks and months of his life in the eyes of gratitude while he was sick. And so after I read that book, and even while I read that book, I thought of my own situation. And then I thought about how I lived 2012 and now into 2013 and dealing with all of this, how I can now look at my own situation and circumstance in this light. And so I really started to look at gratitude in a different light in that way. And I said to myself, I need to be grateful. And so I picked up a pen and paper and I wrote a promise to myself, and it was, I promise to be grateful. And that was the basis of my book, Keep on Keeping On, 31 Days, 31 Promises. And as I wrote a promise a day for 31 days, it was a promise to be grateful, a promise to accept, a promise to cherish family, all these different things that I wanted to make a promise to myself each day. And as I started to read these promises and make these promises to myself, it really started to make me feel much lighter and much more at ease with my situation and circumstance and the new brain that I would have now. So it just really allowed me to see where I was and accept who I am and with the life that I have. So there's a quote by Michael J. Fox, and I might get it wrong, but I love the quote. He says, acceptance is, trying to think now. He says, acceptance is not loving what you have, but putting it on a shelf and acknowledging that it's there. And it's so true.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's deep. That's beautiful.
It makes so much sense, because you don't always have to love and accept all the things that you're going through, but if you can acknowledge that it's there, and you're going to be with it for the rest of your life, maybe not, you just, whatever situation you're going through, acknowledge that it's there for a while, and then just let it go, because there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
Just have to be with it for a while. And as you were saying about your feelings and your emotions, sit with them, because there's nothing you can really do about any of these situations and circumstances of life that we're going through, but you can allow yourself to handle them in a certain way. Of course, I never say to deny your feelings. I never say that, because I feel all the time. I feel my feelings and then I let them go. And then I just embrace each one and move forward with acceptance of life. And that's radical acceptance. And radical acceptance takes time and it takes a lot of practice, but it's, you know.
And what you're saying about radical acceptance is there are days probably that radical acceptance is a little easier than, or not as easy as the day before. I mean, it changes. It can be just slight acceptance but to sit with our emotions. I want to ask you, as you sat in your beautiful mess and you started to write out your gratitude, your 31 days, and did you ever falter during that time, or you really? Okay.
You know, there were days, of course, you know, when I would feel that, why am I going through this? And, you know, I am grateful, but at the same time, what's there to be grateful for? And, you know, that's when there are those days when you can't always be grateful. There's not always something to be grateful for, but there's always something to be grateful in. If you can be grateful in your circumstances, then there's a difference. There's a complete difference. If you're grateful in your circumstances, as opposed to be grateful for something, it changes the storyline. Because if you're grateful in your circumstance, you really can't change what you're going through, but allowing yourself to truly be grateful for what you're moving forward in life with.
Wow, that's big, and difficult to get to the place.
Once again, it's
radical acceptance.
Right.
That it's absolutely beautiful. As you've walked this path, have you had other patients work with, have you worked with other people who've been in a very similar situation as yourself with epileptics?
Well, I don't call them patients, but I do, call them clients.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there are many people that I've worked with and that I've talked with throughout the years that have had epilepsy, and whether it be epilepsy or other, chronic illnesses, but primarily epilepsy, who are trying to deal with their emotions. And gratitude is always, I must say, is always a very difficult thing to find, especially dealing with epilepsy. And the first thing I have to say is that when we're living with epilepsy and when we're going through a particular condition that's making our brains constantly think, and this comes, not just with the condition itself, but it comes with the harsh medicines that we're on.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about this last week where, seizure meds are horrible and they have a lot of really terrible side effects. Suicidal ideations are one of them.
Wow.
And so, and even though I had those attempts in 2012, I still have those thoughts today, and that's all because of my medicine. So I constantly have to have myself in check each day. So when I talk to these people who are going through epilepsy, I constantly reinforce that gratitude is what will help bring you out of that mentality. And, it's sometimes difficult. Most of the time, it's very difficult. But if they allow themselves to see through it, then they can get through to the point where they can get beyond that thought.
Right.
And look to gratitude.
Do you have a process in which you would tell a client to work through, or a process in which you've used yourself? You said you started to write, when this all came about, where you were like, I'm going to start doing this now and I'm going to write daily. Is it bigger than just that writing? And
Yeah. Journaling, of course, is one process. I'm huge on journaling, and I have a journal in the back of my book. So journaling is one process. Affirmations are another process. I'm very big on talking positive to yourself. If you're constantly berating yourself, it's, once again, you were mentioning this in the beginning. If you're constantly berating your mind with negative thoughts and letting them sit there, they're going to turn into something else.
Mhm.
And, I know quite a few people who wake up every morning and look at the negative side of epilepsy than the positive. Just like anyone else who is not dealing with a chronic illness, we're always looking at the negative. We're not really looking at the positive. It's because it's a lot easier to look at the negative than it's the positive. So what I do every morning for myself, I have a ritual every morning. I wake up, I do about 20 minutes of exercise, I do my journaling, I listen to something positive in the morning, and then I do my affirmations. And I do that every single morning without fail. So I'm always talking about that particular process, whether it's with my clients, whether it's with other people that I speak to. But if you allow yourself to wake up in a positive way, instead of constantly thinking about those negative things that are going on in the back of your mind and in front of you, it'll change your life.
Thank you for saying that. It definitely is something you need to really make a conscious decision. I know people who, and I used to do this actually, I have a little cork board next to my side of the bed, and I would put like Post-it notes on it or a note on it. And so that I thought when I'd open my eyes and I'd look at that cork board and I would see, you woke up, be happy, or today is a beautiful day. Or the first thing I would see would be that cork board. Well, the room was dark, I'm getting up earlier, I'm not looking at the cork board. And we could get caught up in the thoughts we were having the night before,
right?
Or this darn thing can take over. I don't look at that at all in the mornings. I keep that far away from me. But it's taken a lot of work for me to do that, especially nowadays. We're getting caught up even more in electronics, in pushing down our feelings. And I think as we start to separate, I know for myself, kind of doing a detox from it, or making a conscious effort to be grateful, to forgive myself, to move through things, to have that inner self-talk be something different and more positive. One of them is to keep this electronic thing out of my face all the time. And I have it on silent most all the time. So if I'm not getting back to people, that's why. I'm just need the space. But there is this allure of, oh, well, I just want to see if this came in, or I just want that can then pull us forward into this negative nonsense. And as I was saying in the beginning, it's this self-talk, this inner self-talk. Before it begins, we have to shut it off. And it really starts when we begin in the morning.
Right. Even as you said, even before we go to bed. I mean, we can be thinking about all the crap that went on the night before and take that to bed with us.
Right. And then you're not sleeping well anyway, right. And you're waking up with it.
And, I also recommend people do a gratitude practice at night, because that would help you find all the things that you're grateful for before you go to sleep, and that'll enable you to have a better rest. That's because if you're constantly dwelling over the things that went wrong throughout your day, and this doesn't always work for me, but because of course my brain's all over the place. But yeah, it's my brain's always all over the place. But if I can just get to a space where I can put those 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for and allow myself to really sit in that, think about it, it allows me to go to bed with a much deeper sense of relaxation and purpose, and I'm better able to get that night's rest than if I'm constantly thinking about all the junk that had happened throughout the day.
Yeah.
Wake up refreshed and
right.
ready to do my practice that I would normally do during the day.
Wow, that's great. Do you write out your affirmations and have them posted? Are they specific affirmations you've come up with? Are you using others?
I do have quite a few posted on my refrigerator. So I do say those, but then I basically just say a few random ones. I used to listen to a YouTube recording, but I don't listen to that anymore. I just now say them on
in you.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I know Louise Hay, whom I mentioned in my last show, is that she is, the queen of the affirmations. And even her calendars, her little tear-off calendars always have, which I think I have one right here. Yes, I do. Where it's always a positive statement for the day. Yeah. And I find that helps. I know people often will put it in their bathroom, in their bathroom mirrors and on the toilet and the whole thing. And I used to do that for my kids, actually. I used to put it on the refrigerator and have them. And actually, I have one of my kids, mind me interjecting a kid story in here. When he was a teenager, not a teenager, he was in college already. And he was miserable and he was not doing well at all in school. He just was having a tough time. And he had something he hadn't been diagnosed with, and we didn't know what was going on. And I found that he was in such deep depression that I decided to get a bunch of sticky notes, and I made him sit and write them out with me as much as he could. He was like pretty low, and I put "I am" at the top and stuck that right at the top of the doors outside his bed, like where his bed was. He could see the doors of his closet. And then I am, I am love. I am God-filled. I am, happy. I am, all the I am statements of just, I am joy. I am worthy. All of those statements, so that every morning when he'd wake up, he'd see them. It was a slow go, because it has to come internally, it has to come from each person really on their own. I mean, mom here is trying to run in and like, I'm going to rescue you. And we can't do that with our clients, our children, our friends, our family. They have to do it for themselves.
Yeah. And so, but how did it work out? Was he able to?
Great question. Thank you. He did finally, yes, he's one of the happiest people I know. So I guess it has worked out where he's definitely moved through that. But it's, you have to do the work. You can't just, and I know for myself, I can be my own worst enemy with some of these things. That's why I love doing the Family Balancing Act show, because I have to be doing the work in order to have the conversation, or have the conversation, make sure I do the work, because it's going to come up again. And this is just important stuff, and we have to keep moving forward. You mentioned, I know you deal with your health issue. There are so many people that have. Many people have epilepsy. I had 2 friends have it as growing up. and you even mentioned the actor who's got
Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox. There's so many chronic illnesses out there, and they seem to have grown at a level that is quite unprecedented for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
And have you found, as you did your research for your book beyond your own personal inner research, are there support out there like the one you're offering with gratitude? Are you finding that's being offered out there? Because I don't see it.
I be honest, I don't. And even with epilepsy support groups, here in New York, there is the Epilepsy Foundation, but it's here in Manhattan, there aren't any support groups anymore. They used to be, but they've all closed, and it's very hard to really reach out and find any physical support to go and speak to people who have these issues. So it makes it very hard to try and find that support and that, just to find anyone to talk to. So the primary support that I find is from people on Facebook and people on Instagram, all those different forums now, because here in the States, there are 3.5 million people with epilepsy, and throughout the world, there's 65 million people with epilepsy. Yeah.
Well, our show reaches like 220 countries, so we'll have you thought, or have you done any kind of support workshops on Facebook, or have you yourself done anything like that, or in Zoom?
I haven't really touched that yet. I'd like to. I've thought about it. It's just something that I'm finding difficult to form.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, to try and find a group of people. I do have my chat rooms, or should I say my business pages and such, to try and draw an audience of epileptics to the page, but the majority of my audience are non-epileptics. And it's, like I said before, it's very hard to have someone who has seizures find gratitude in their circumstance unless they're really ready to move through it and say, I want to embrace my beautiful mess. And I do have these places that they can come and find information, but once again, it's the majority of the people that follow me don't have epilepsy.
Well, they might not have the physical presentation of it, but it's in all the other crap, as you say, the mess, the beautiful mess they have. Right. They're creating that in a different way.
Right.
Yeah, it can be such a struggle. If you don't mind, can I jump a question back to you from like your prior to your surgery even?
Yeah.
How was your family through this with you? How did you function in your family?
In reference
to epilepsy and to your health. I mean, how it must have been very, I'm impressing this on you. You can correct me or tell me to be quiet. Yeah. Difficult for parents
100%
to help their child. Like they probably had no tools. They didn't know what to do.
Both of my parents are very supportive. My mother is extremely supportive. And, it's still to this day, it's very difficult because, she goes through it all with me. And, for her to see her child going through what he's gone through, and, as you know, being a mother, very hard to see a child going through something. So for my mother to see her child going through all that he's gone through, and to have then two healthy children,
Right.
it makes it that much more difficult. And so she had, it's been very difficult for her, especially. And, I was in the hospital beginning of January. And so, once again, she's always there. And then I was in the hospital back in March for something completely separate from the neurological aspect of it, but it was caused by that. Had a gastrointestinal blockage caused by my shunts. And so that was a 7-week ordeal in the hospital. And then I stayed with her and my stepfather for about 4 months. So, yeah.
Yeah, and here you just want to get on with your life.
Right. So
keep on moving on.
Exactly.
You
Right.
know?
You want to just keep on keeping on is what I always say, and that's basically what I do. And what I try and instill in her. And once again, as you know, being a mother, it's kind of hard for a child to say that to their parents. But
well, yeah, as a mother, I know. I mean, I would do anything to take it on myself.
She says the same thing.
So that my child would never ever have to do it.
Right.
Because you just the pain of watching this process, no matter what the small, large fever, even, many times I sat there and, begging God to just let me have the fever and not my child. Or, one of my kids had appendicitis and it wasn't good. And it was, why didn't I get it? Not my, and leave my child alone. Yours is a very big story that, you've not only walked the path, but your family walks the path with you.
Right. Yeah. And it's same thing with my brothers. Both of my brothers are both very supportive. My twin brother and my older brother, they've both been, just to see me going through all this stuff. It's just, it's hard for me, but at the same time, it's hard for them.
Well, that's family now, isn't it? You can feel and you're connected emotionally.
Right.
No matter what, even near or far, even if you can't stand each other, there's an emotional bond that's always hanging there. It's always there, even if one tries to ignore it. So that's great. Through all of this, how else have you chosen to accept your circumstances?
I just have to wake up every day and look beyond it. I can't change it. And I know I'm going to live with it for the rest of my life. So the best way for me to really accept it is to look beyond the circumstance. And, that's another form of radical acceptance where you're living through it, but at the same time, and you're truly acknowledging what you're going through. So you're not just feeling it all. You're not allowing it to cripple you at the same time, I guess, is the best way for me to really explain it. I just, once again, have to look beyond what I'm going through, allow it to continue to make me stronger every day. And it does, because if I don't allow it to make me stronger, then I'll just continue to fall back. And, of course, I don't want that.
Right.
Nobody wants that. So, I have to just keep looking up even when I'm down.
Well, you are an amazing inspiration. And I'm so moved by our conversation. And you're making a big difference in the world. And I don't know, I mean, my opinion, my thoughts here, it's just, you are obviously very blessed because you were the chosen one. You were the one to have this experience, to carry forth a really big message in the world. And you are that giant pebble, maybe more like a boulder that's rolled into the water and rippling out into the world. So I am so very grateful, truly. And like, as I sit here, my gratitude is like growing and growing, to have had this conversation with you. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you? This is all going to be posted anyway on all the podcast information, and anything else.
Sure. Well, you can find my book. And I also have a blog. It's a weekly blog. I blog every Monday. So you can find me at thepromisesyoukeep.com. And there's also, I do have apparel there as well. I have a 7-day gratitude journal, but also I do have my book. So you can go ahead at thepromisesyoukeep.com, and you can find me at The Promises You Keep on Instagram. And I believe my Facebook page is at The Promises You Keep, or Embrace the Blessings at facebook.com. And just allow yourself every day to find a little gratitude in the mess. Allow yourself to embrace it, regardless of what you may be going through, because life is certainly too short to go a day without being grateful in your circumstance. And if you're not grateful for something, find something to be grateful if you were to be grateful for something. You know, once again, I had said to you earlier, if you're not grateful for something, be grateful in something. Be grateful in your circumstance, but then if you're not grateful for something, find something that you could be grateful for as well.
That is wonderful. Thank you. And I just want to say, you can get his book on Amazon, and you can get it as paperback and on Kindle, correct? On Kindle, yes.
Yeah.
So again, thank you so much. We're just gonna close out here. I want to thank all of our listeners today. I hope that you enjoyed listening to Danny. I know I did. I learned so much. Please reach out to him. Let him know what you're thinking. Let him know if you need support. He's really good. So if you take a moment, put both your hands on your heart, close your eyes, and be so very, very grateful for you. Yes, for you. You're not an accident. You're here totally on purpose. Take a deep breath in and hold it. And release it. Exhale. And know that you're not alone. You're on the Family Balancing Act.